You don't own this lake anymore, Gavin. Celeste Holloway said it with a champagne glass in one hand and two county commissioners standing behind her like backup singers. The marina lights reflected off the water in long gold streaks while fog rolled low across the lake's surface, thick enough to swallow the fishing docks 50 yards downshore. I stood there in cold morning air with wet cedar smell coming off the shoreline and security guards blocking access to my own dock. One of them actually put a hand out toward my chest like I was some drunk tourist who wandered into the wrong country club. Residents only tonight, sir. Sir. I looked past him at the floating marina stretching across Mercer Lake like a parasite. $3 million in composite decking, steel pilings, luxury slips, and polished white railings built directly over water my family had controlled since 1948. Celeste smiled at me from the ribbon platform in her cream blazer, rain mist gathering on her shoulders. You had every opportunity to cooperate with the HOA, she called out, loud enough for the crowd to hear. People laughed softly into wine glasses. A few turned and stared at me the way people stare at somebody already losing a public fight. That was Celeste's real talent. Not yelling, not threats, public positioning. She could humiliate somebody without ever raising her voice. The live jazz band near the clubhouse kept playing while lake wind pushed against the canvas tents and rattled the temporary lighting rigs overhead. I remember hearing halyards clinking against sailboat masts somewhere in the fog while muddy water slapped softly under the marina floats. Calm sounds. Expensive sounds. The kind of sounds people mistake for power. Then Celeste lifted the microphone again. Tonight, she announced, Hollow Cove Marina officially becomes the future of this community. Applause rolled across the dock. Investors, realtors, HOA board members, people wearing cashmere near a lake they'd never touched before 6 months ago. She turned back toward me with that polished smile. Some people confuse inheritance with ownership. More laughter. A man beside her smirked into his bourbon like he'd just watched a punchline land. I didn't answer right away. I just looked past the marina toward the far end of the lake where fog pressed low against the spillway ridge. The old concrete floodgate sat hidden behind cedar trees and rain-dark stone almost a mile north. Nobody at this party was thinking about it. That was the problem. Celeste had spent 2 years convincing these people the lake was scenery instead of infrastructure. She thought if you built enough luxury around water, eventually people forgot somebody controlled it. I took the thermos from my truck hood and poured myself coffee while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the county line. The metal roof over the catering station pinged softly under cold rain. Then I looked directly at Celeste Holloway and said, calm enough for the front row to hear me clearly, then you should have checked who controls the dam. Nobody laughed that time. You ever seen a crowd realize all at once they may have backed the wrong person? Comment below with your city and tell me if your town's got one of these HOA tyrants running around, because what happened before sunrise that morning nearly destroyed Hollow Cove Estates. Nobody stopped me when I walked back toward my truck after that. That was the strange part. 10 seconds earlier, security had been standing there like they were guarding Fort Knox. Then I mentioned the dam, and suddenly everybody got quiet in that expensive, nervous way people do when they realize there might be paperwork involved they do not understand. The lake wind pushed harder across the shoreline while fog drifted through the marina lights in slow gray sheets. I climbed into my old Silverado and sat there for a minute with the engine off, listening to rain tap against the windshield and the distant hum of generators from the launch party. My thermos coffee had gone lukewarm. I drank it anyway. Across the water, Hollow Cove Marina glowed like a floating casino. $3 million worth of polished confidence sitting on top of 40 feet of cold black water. My water. I wish I could tell you I felt angry right then, but honestly, exhaustion hit first. The kind that settles into your chest after spending 2 years watching strangers slowly take ownership of something your family bled for. My grandfather dug the first spillway trench on that lake with a rented bulldozer in 1949. My father reinforced the eastern embankment after the flood of 1977. I scattered my wife Ellie's ashes off the north fishing dock 6 winters ago during freezing rain while geese drifted through the fog. Celeste Holloway turned all of that into a wine and charcuterie backdrop for people wearing yacht shoes. That was the part one could not forgive. Not the marina. The disrespect. I pulled out onto Hollow Creek Road while thunder rolled low beyond the county courthouse district 20 miles south. Pickup trucks lined both sides of the marina entrance now. Valet attendants, catering vans, local real estate people hoping to attach themselves to the project before property values jumped. As I drove past the front gate, I caught residents staring at me from under umbrellas. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked satisfied. One man I had known 15 years actually lowered his eyes when our headlights crossed. Social pressure changes people fast in HOA communities. Nobody wants to be the next target. My phone buzzed before I hit the highway. Celeste. I let it ring twice before answering. You made a scene tonight, she said calmly. Not angry. Worse. Controlled. I did not realize standing on my own shoreline counted as a scene. Silence. I could hear music behind her and glasses clinking somewhere inside the clubhouse. You are frightening investors, Gavin. Investors. Not neighbors. Investors. There it was. The truth finally slipping through her polished little performance. You built commercial infrastructure on a protected private basin, I said. You should be frightened. Another pause. Then her voice cooled another 10 degrees. You are becoming difficult to protect. That one stayed with me the whole drive home. Not because it scared me, because it explained everything. Celeste did not think like a resident. She thought like ownership management. Influence, pressure, containment. The marina was never about community access. It was about transforming Mercer Lake into a luxury development zone before county regulators tightened shoreline restrictions next year. She needed this launch event to succeed publicly before anyone looked too closely. I turned onto my gravel driveway just after 11. Rainwater ran through the ruts beside the truck tires while fog pressed low across the shoreline below my cabin. The old cedar boathouse creaked softly in the wind. Half the lake had disappeared into darkness except for the marina lights glowing in the distance like something artificial floating where it did not belong. Then I noticed headlights parked beside my gate. County utility truck. Engine off. Driver still inside. Waiting. The man stepped out before I killed my engine. Mr. Mercer? He asked quietly. My name is Daniel Vickers. Water Management Division. He glanced back toward the lake before lowering his voice. You need to see what they buried under that marina before sunrise. Daniel Vickers kept looking past me toward the lake like he expected somebody to come flying down the gravel road behind him. Rain tapped softly against the hood of his county truck while fog drifted through the cedar trees along the shoreline below my cabin. The marina lights still glowed across the water, faint now through the mist, but loud enough to ruin the darkness. Daniel held a rolled set of engineering prints under one arm, soaked halfway through from the weather. You mind if we go inside? He asked quietly. That caught my attention more than anything else. County utility guys around Mercer County usually talked outdoors beside truck beds with thermos coffee and cigarette smoke. Asking to come inside meant liability. It meant witnesses. I unlocked the cabin and the smell of old pine, lake dampness, and black coffee hit us the second the door opened. Rain rattled softly across the metal roof while thunder rolled farther south toward the courthouse district. Daniel spread the damp prints across my kitchen table beside Ellie's old ceramic lamp. This stays between us for now, he said. Officially, I was never here. Then he pointed directly at the center section of the marina foundation grid. At first glance it looked normal. Anchor points, utility routing, electrical conduit, fuel line access. Then I saw the shaded section beneath Dock C. My stomach tightened immediately. That is inside the flood control easement, I said. Daniel nodded once. They buried steel reinforcement pylons directly over your emergency spillway pressure channel. Silence settled over the cabin except for rain and the distant groan of wind off the lake. I leaned closer to the plans while cold anger worked slowly through my chest. Not panic. Worse. Recognition. Somebody on that construction team had warned them. There was no way this happened accidentally. Daniel rubbed a hand across his jaw. You know what happens if spring runoff hits full pressure against blocked release flow. The basin backs up. Exactly. He looked toward the dark window facing the shoreline. Best case, the marina tears itself apart. Worst case, you destabilize the eastern embankment. I stared at him for a long moment. My grandfather's embankment. The one rebuilt after the '77 flood. The same structure county engineers called stable for decades. Celeste's little floating country club had been sitting on top of a hydraulic risk the entire time. That changed everything emotionally. Until then, I thought she was arrogant, reckless, maybe corrupt, but this crossed into something colder. She gambled with the lake itself because she assumed nobody important would challenge her before launch night. Daniel slid another sheet toward me. There is more. He pointed to a signature block near the bottom. Permit approval. County Water Management Division. Signed by Deputy Director Harold Pike. I almost laughed when I saw it. Harold retired 11 months ago after his stroke. He physically could not have approved anything 3 months ago. Daniel noticed my expression immediately. Yeah, he said softly. That is when I started digging. Fog pressed heavier against the windows now, swallowing the shoreline lights below my dock. Somewhere across the water, I could faintly hear music from the Marina launch party, still going on like nothing was wrong. Wealthy people drinking Pinot Noir over a compromised spillway system during storm season. Perfect Hollow Cove behavior. My phone buzzed again on the counter. Neighborhood group chat this time. Pictures from the party. Smiling residents. Champagne toasts. Somebody posted a photo of me standing outside the Marina gate earlier with the caption, "Old man meltdown at the lake." 23 laughing reactions already. Daniel saw it over my shoulder and shook his head slowly. They really do not understand how serious this is. No, I said quietly, staring at the glowing screen. But they are about to. Then headlights swept across the cabin windows from the driveway outside. Black luxury SUV. Celeste. Daniel went pale the second he saw the headlights sweep across the kitchen windows. She followed me, he muttered under his breath. I looked through the rain-streaked glass toward the black Escalade parked beside my gravel turnaround. Celeste Holloway stepped out holding a dark umbrella while lake fog curled around the tires and drifted through the cedar trees behind her. Even standing in ankle-deep mud beside a rural cabin after midnight, the woman somehow looked like she had just stepped out of a corporate board meeting. Cream coat. Perfect posture. Calm face. That polished control again. But I noticed something new this time. She came alone. No board members. No investors. No smiling audience. That mattered. Backroom, I told Daniel quietly. He hesitated. If she sees me here, then she knows you finally grew a conscience. Thunder rolled somewhere over the county line while rain tapped harder against the roof. Daniel disappeared down the hallway carrying the engineering prints just as Celeste knocked 3 soft times against the front door. Not aggressive. Worse. Familiar. Like she already belonged here. I opened the door halfway. Cold lake wind pushed damp air into the cabin carrying mud smell, cedar bark, and distant gasoline from the Marina generators across the water. Celeste glanced past me immediately, scanning the room. Always assessing. You left your own party, I said. Temporary emergencies require leadership. There it was again. That language. Everything reduced to management strategy. She stepped inside without being invited and closed the umbrella carefully beside Ellie's old coat rack. You embarrassed me tonight, she said softly. Not angry. Injured pride. The dangerous kind. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You built over a protected hydraulic channel. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Small movement, but real. You have been talking to people who do not understand development law. Funny thing about engineers, I said. We usually understand water better than realtors. Silence settled between us while rain hammered harder overhead. Across the lake, faint music still drifted through the fog from the Marina launch party, but quieter now. Uneasy somehow. Celeste walked slowly toward the kitchen window overlooking the shoreline. Do you know what your problem is, Gavin? She asked. You think this lake still belongs to memory. She looked back at me with that same composed expression she used at HOA meetings when destroying somebody publicly over mailbox paint or landscaping violations. Communities evolve. Wealth comes in. Infrastructure changes. You either adapt or you become a story people tell about the old days. That one landed harder than I expected because part of me feared she might already be right. Half the original lake residents had sold out in the last 6 years. Fishing cabins replaced with glass vacation homes. Pontoon boats replaced with investor tours. Even the old diner off Route 8 shut down last winter after taxes doubled. Hollow Cove was turning into someplace polished and expensive and emotionally dead. Celeste sensed hesitation immediately. Predators do. You do not have the political support to stop this anymore, she said quietly. The county wants development. Residents want rising values. Investors want expansion. And frankly, most people are tired of one stubborn widower slowing down progress. Widower. She used that word deliberately. A pressure point. I felt the anger then. Slow and cold. Not explosive. Controlled. You forged county authorization under a retired official's name, I said evenly. First real crack. Tiny, but visible. Her jaw tightened before the smile returned. Careful, she said softly. Allegations like that can become expensive. Then my phone buzzed again on the counter. Another neighborhood post. This time somebody uploaded drone footage of the marina rocking unevenly in the wind. Residents were already arguing in the comments. One person claimed the eastern dock section looked lower than it should. Another said fuel lines smelled strange near slip 12. Then came the post that changed the entire mood instantly. Somebody uploaded a screenshot from county flood maps showing the marina sitting directly over the emergency spillway corridor. The comments exploded within seconds. Residents tagging each other. Questions. Panic. Confusion. Celeste saw it over my shoulder, and for the first time since I met her 2 years ago, her confidence flickered. Celeste recovered fast. That was the terrifying thing about her. Most people panic when control starts slipping in public. Celeste reorganized. She picked up my phone from the counter before I could stop her and read through the neighborhood comments with the same detached expression somebody might use reviewing quarterly earnings reports. Outside, rain hammered against the lake while thunder rolled low enough to vibrate the window glass. Fog swallowed most of the shoreline now except for the distant marina lights flickering through the mist like a dying cruise ship. This is exactly why small communities fail, she said quietly, setting the phone down. People react emotionally before understanding the larger picture. The larger picture being forged permits and compromised flood control. Her eyes met mine. Calm. Flat. The larger picture being economic survival. There it was again. Not denial. Justification. That was when I finally understood Celeste Holloway completely. She genuinely believed wealth excused damage if the outcome looked polished enough afterward. The woman did not think she was corrupt. She thought she was necessary. Another notification buzzed across the phone screen. Then another. Residents were posting photos from the marina docks now. One image showed standing water pooling unevenly across the eastern platform. Another showed one of the steel support beams partially exposed where wave action had shifted sediment near the shoreline. Somebody uploaded video of a dock section creaking hard during a wind gust while guests stumbled spilling drinks. The tone online changed by the minute. Less celebration. More confusion. Questions turning sharper. Then came the first post asking who approved construction over a flood corridor. Celeste saw that one too. Tiny crack again. Not panic yet. Irritation. People see one engineering diagram online, and suddenly everyone becomes a structural expert, she muttered. Then headlights appeared behind her SUV outside. Another vehicle climbing my gravel driveway through the rain. Pickup truck this time. Old Ford County maintenance truck covered in mud. Daniel stepped out of the hallway behind us before I could stop him. She already knows I am here, he said quietly. Celeste turned slowly when she heard his voice. For the first time all night, her mask slipped completely. You, she said. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut glass. Daniel looked exhausted more than afraid. You buried support pylons inside an emergency pressure release zone. You signed off on the secondary inspection review. After your office altered the basin maps. Silence slammed into the room. Rain. Thunder. Distant marina music fading weaker across the lake. Celeste folded her arms carefully, recalibrating. Do you understand what happens if this project collapses publicly tonight? She asked him. The county loses investors. Property values crater. Hundreds of residents lose equity overnight. Daniel shook his head slowly. You are worried about lawsuits. She did not answer immediately, and that told me enough. Then she looked back toward me. You can still contain this. There it was. The offer hidden inside the threat. Delay any formal challenge until after launch weekend. She continued softly. We stabilize the dock sections quietly next month. The county avoids embarrassment. Residents keep their investments. And your shoreline dispute disappears permanently. I almost laughed hearing her call it a shoreline dispute now. A few hours earlier, she was publicly humiliating me in front of investors. Now she wanted negotiation. The power shift hit her too. I could see it behind the composure. She was calculating exposure windows, liability chains, public optics. Outside, another gust rolled across the lake hard enough to shake the cabin walls. Somewhere in the distance, metal groaned across the marina structure. Nobody inside the room spoke for several seconds. Then my phone buzzed again with a direct message from someone I had not heard from in almost a year. Sheriff Nolan Pierce. Short message. 6 words. Call me before you do anything. I did not call Sheriff Pierce immediately. That surprised even me. 6 hours earlier, I probably would have grabbed the phone looking for backup, looking for somebody to stop this before the whole lake turned into a legal wildfire. But standing there inside that cabin with rain hammering the roof, and Celeste Holloway trying to negotiate around structural exposure like she was smoothing over a catering mistake, something shifted in me. The fear finally burned out. What replaced it was colder. Clarity. Celeste noticed it too. Predators always sense when prey stops panicking. I picked up the phone, muted the neighborhood notifications, and set it face down on the counter. You said this can still be contained, I told her calmly. That depends entirely on what you already filed with the county. She folded her arms tighter. You are not entitled to internal development records. Actually, Daniel said quietly from the hallway, he owns the underlying basin easement. That changes disclosure requirements. Celeste ignored him completely. Classic HOA politics. If somebody threatened the narrative, she simply acted like they no longer existed. Gavin, she said, softer now, do not mistake internet gossip for legal leverage. I walked past her toward the old filing cabinet beside Ellie's bookshelf and unlocked the bottom drawer. 40 years of lake maintenance records sat inside. Flood maps, emergency stabilization plans, water control agreements signed after the '77 flood. My father kept everything. Back then I used to think he was paranoid. Suddenly the old man looked like a genius. I laid 3 folders across the kitchen table while thunder rolled over the lake hard enough to shake the windows. Celeste stayed quiet watching me for the first time since she arrived. No performance. No smiling superiority. Assessment. I opened the first document. Emergency Basin Authority Agreement, Mercer County Water District 1981. Her eyes dropped immediately to the highlighted section. Read the second paragraph, I said. She did not move. Daniel did instead. In the event of structural compromise, flood obstruction, or unauthorized hydraulic interference, Basin Control Authority reverts immediately to the designated landholder pending county review. Silence. Even the rain seemed quieter for a second. Celeste finally looked up. That agreement is outdated. Renewed in 2014, I said, sliding another signed renewal document across the table. Tiny crack again. Her breathing changed first. Slightly shorter. Controlled people always reveal stress physically before emotionally. Outside, headlights moved slowly past the driveway entrance. Residents driving by pretending not to stare at the cabin. Word was spreading now. Small towns move faster than weather once fear enters the conversation. My phone buzzed again despite being muted. Daniel glanced down at the screen. Somebody leaked the Marina inspection photos. I took the phone and opened the community page. Hundreds of comments now. Residents arguing openly. One investor demanding to know why fuel permits had not been finalized. Another asking whether homeowner insurance would still cover marina-related damages if flood easement violations were confirmed. That one mattered. Insurance panic changes rich people faster than morality ever will. Celeste saw the same realization hit me. You released those documents publicly and property values collapse by morning, she said sharply. There it was. No more community language. No more polished leadership act. Just raw liability fear. No, I said quietly. Property values collapse when people realize their HOA president buried steel pylons over a county emergency release channel during storm season. Another long silence settled through the cabin while fog pressed against the shoreline windows thick enough to erase the lake completely. Then Celeste reached slowly into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Before you decide anything, she said carefully, you should probably see who else signed onto this project. She slid the paper across the table toward me. County Commissioner Elaine Mercer. My cousin. The room went dead quiet after I saw Elaine's signature. Rain hammered the roof hard enough to blur the marina lights beyond the shoreline windows while fog drifted low across the water like the lake itself was trying to disappear. My cousin Elaine Mercer had been county commissioner for almost 9 years. We grew up fishing the same docks together. She sat beside my father at Ellie's funeral. And now her signature sat underneath a development approval tied to forged permits and a compromised spillway system. I stared at the page for several seconds before finally looking up at Celeste. How long? I asked quietly. long enough that fighting this publicly becomes complicated for everyone involved. There it was again. Not remorse. Strategy. Celeste Holloway treated human relationships the same way she treated zoning maps. Assets. Pressure points. Leverage. Daniel shifted uneasily near the hallway. He looked sick now. Not scared. Guilty. Elaine probably never saw the hydraulic revisions, he said carefully. Her office signs dozens of development packets every month. Celeste gave him a look sharp enough to freeze Rain. Please do not insult everyone's intelligence in this room. Outside, another car slowed near the driveway before continuing down the shoreline road. People were watching now. That was the thing about Mercer Lake communities. Nobody ever admitted they loved drama, but they all slowed down for it. The neighborhood page had exploded completely by then. Residents posting screenshots. Rumors spreading faster than the storm rolling across the county. One investor publicly demanded an emergency engineering review. Somebody leaked drone footage showing one side of the marina sitting visibly lower in rough water. Then came the social shift I never expected to happen this fast. Residents started turning on Celeste openly. Not all at once. Quietly first. One woman asked why the HOA board approved construction before final flood inspections. Another demanded to know whether association dues had been used to cover emergency structural work last month. Then one of the older residents posted 3 words that changed the entire atmosphere online. We were lied to. After that, the comments turned ugly fast. People who spent years terrified of Celeste suddenly smelled weakness. That is how HOA kingdoms collapse. Not with explosions. With silence breaking all at once. My phone rang again. Sheriff Pierce this time. I answered without taking my eyes off Celeste. You watching the community page? He asked immediately. Unfortunately, I could hear diner noise faintly behind him. Coffee cups. Low conversations. Rain against windows. Small town midnight soundtrack. County attorney just called me, he said. Apparently 3 board members left the launch party already. That hit Celeste harder than the online backlash. Tiny movement again. Her shoulders tightened almost invisibly. Board members abandoning the marina meant social insulation was cracking. Nobody wanted liability attached to their names now. Anything official yet? I asked. Not yet, Pierce said carefully. But if those flood corridor maps are authentic, county risk management is going to panic before sunrise. Celeste stepped closer while I listened. Sheriff, she said evenly, loud enough for him to hear through the phone. I would caution everyone against reacting emotionally to incomplete information. Pierce laughed softly on the other end. Not mocking. Tired. Funny thing about incomplete information, Celeste, he said. It usually does not make people leave their own grand opening party in the rain. Silence settled again after the call ended. The old authority she carried around like perfume was evaporating right there inside my kitchen. Not dramatically. Socially. Which is worse for people like her. Then another notification flashed across my screen. Emergency HOA board meeting. Effective immediately. Location changed from Marina Clubhouse to County Administration Building. By 1:30 in the morning, the storm had swallowed Mercer Lake completely. Fog pressed so thick against the shoreline roads that headlights looked smeared across the dark water, and rain hammered every metal roof around Hollow Cove hard enough to drown conversation. Celeste stood near my kitchen window staring at her phone while notification after notification rolled across the screen. Residents demanding answers. Investors asking whether launch insurance had been suspended. Somebody leaked internal HOA budget transfers tied to emergency dock stabilization work from 3 weeks earlier. That one detonated the community completely. The comments turned vicious after that. People who spent years defending Celeste suddenly acted like they barely knew her. One board member publicly claimed he never reviewed the engineering revisions. Another announced he was resigning, effective immediately pending independent investigation. The social collapse was accelerating faster than the weather. Then came the sound of tires grinding across wet gravel outside the cabin. Multiple vehicles this time. White County SUVs. Sheriff cruisers. No sirens. That was worse. Quiet authority always means paperwork already exists somewhere. Celeste looked toward the driveway and finally lost the last of her composure. Tiny inhale. Shoulders stiffening. Eyes narrowing toward the headlights cutting through the rain. Sheriff Nolan Pierce stepped onto the porch first, pulling his coat tighter against the wind, while 2 county investigators climbed out behind him carrying waterproof document cases. Nobody rushed. Nobody yelled. Prestige collapse never looks dramatic in real life. It looks administrative. Slow footsteps in the rain, while everyone suddenly avoids eye contact. Pierce knocked once before opening the door. "Evening," he said tiredly. His boots tracked mud water across the floorboards while thunder rolled somewhere above the courthouse district downtown. One of the investigators glanced immediately toward the engineering plans still spread across my kitchen table. "Miss Holloway," the older investigator said calmly, "we need to discuss the Marina permit chain and emergency flood exposure liability." Celeste straightened instantly, trying to recover the room. "This is highly inappropriate," she said sharply. "You do not conduct county inquiries inside private residences in the middle of the night." "Actually," Pierce replied quietly, "we do when people start building commercial structures over restricted hydraulic corridors during a storm warning." Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind that settles over a room when power changes ownership. Outside, more vehicles slowed along the shoreline road. Residents watching through rain-streaked windshields. Gossip spreading in real time. Nobody honked. Nobody approached. They just watched the way small towns always do when somebody important starts falling apart publicly. One investigator opened a folder carefully. "At 12:46 tonight," he said, "Mercer County Risk Management issued an emergency exposure notice regarding structural obstruction inside the eastern spillway corridor." Celeste crossed her arms tighter. "This is political theater." "No," I said calmly from the kitchen table. "This is liability." Her eyes snapped toward me. I noticed then she no longer looked angry. Angry people still believe they can recover. Celeste looked isolated. The investigators continued anyway. Emergency HOA board meeting officially suspended. Marina operations frozen, pending review. Insurance carriers notified. County engineering authority temporarily transferred back to basin control holder, pending stabilization assessment. Me. The younger investigator finally slid one final document across the table toward Celeste. Formal notice of preliminary administrative review. Her hand rested on the paper for several seconds without picking it up. Outside, the marina lights flickered faintly through the fog across the lake while wind pushed waves hard enough against the shoreline to shake the old dock pilings below my cabin. Then Sheriff Pierce looked toward me quietly. "Gavin," he said, "if the spillway pressure worsens before sunrise, county recommendation is immediate emergency drawdown authorization." And for the first time all night, nobody in the room argued with me. The rain finally broke around 4:15 in the morning. Not completely, just enough for the fog to thin across Mercer Lake and expose the marina sitting crooked against the dark water like something embarrassed to be seen in daylight. Sheriff Pierce stood beside me near the spillway control shed holding a flashlight, while county engineers checked pressure readings under portable flood lamps. Wet cedar smell rolled through the cold air, and muddy water surged hard against the release channel beneath the old concrete gate. I had not stood down there since Ellie died. Funny how people avoid places tied too tightly to memory until crisis drags them back. Pierce handed me the emergency authorization folder without saying much. He did not need to. Everybody already understood what came next. 2 county investigators signed the final stabilization order against the hood of a pickup truck while rainwater dripped off their jackets. Emergency drawdown approved. Temporary basin authority restored to property holder. Me. Across the lake, panic had already spread through Hollow Cove Marina. Residents clustered beneath umbrellas watching county trucks move onto the shoreline access road, while marina staff quietly disconnected power from the outer docks. Nobody looked excited anymore. Nobody looked wealthy anymore either. Just nervous. Human. The first release gate opened at 4:32. Deep metallic groan. Water surged through the spillway channel carrying branches, mud, and years of pressure with it. Slowly at first, then faster. Fog rolled low over the exposed shoreline while the marina began settling unevenly against the dropping waterline. You could actually hear the structure straining. Not collapsing dramatically, just failing expensively. Slip by slip, dock by dock, the eastern platform tilted almost 6 inches within the first hour. Investors started leaving before sunrise. Then came the best part. Residents stopped blaming me publicly. One by one, they turned toward Celeste instead. The same people who spent months reposting HOA slogans and mocking the stubborn lake widower suddenly wanted answers about reserve funds, forged approvals, and hidden stabilization costs. By sunrise, 3 board members resigned. By noon, county investigators seized financial records from the HOA administration office. And by sunset, local news drones filmed the marina stranded in 20 feet of mud, while headlines questioned how a luxury development bypassed hydraulic review during storm season. Celeste Holloway did not get arrested. Real life is rarely that cinematic. What happened instead was worse for someone like her. She lost social oxygen. Residents stopped returning her calls. People avoided eye contact at the county diner. Investors publicly denied knowing her. Even the women who used to orbit around her at HOA mixers suddenly found reasons to leave rooms when she entered. Prestige people survive on perception. Once perception rots, everything else follows. Elaine Mercer stepped down from the county board 31 days later pending ethics review. She called me once during that month. I let it ring. Daniel Vickers kept his job because he cooperated early and turned over the permit revisions before formal subpoenas started flying. Sheriff Pierce later admitted county risk management feared the marina exposure could have bankrupted multiple insurance carriers if spring flooding hit at full pressure. That part stayed mostly out of the papers. Too expensive for public conversation. 3 months later, Mercer Lake looked like itself again. Quiet water, fishing docks, fog over the shoreline at dawn. I rebuilt the old North Pier with cedar planks from my father's workshop and reopened the boat gate that Celeste once tried to block with HOA fencing. One Saturday morning, I noticed something strange while drinking coffee on the dock. Neighbors started waving again. Not performative HOA smiles either. Real ones. Embarrassed ones. The kind people give when they realize fear made them side with the wrong person. And honestly, that mattered more than the lawsuits. More than the investigations. More than watching that marina sink into the mud. Because this was never just about property. It was about dignity. About what happens when polished people mistake quietness for weakness and community for ownership. Hollow Cove learned that lesson the hard way. They built luxury over water they never understood, trusted authority without asking questions, and mocked the one person trying to stop them before the damage became permanent. In the end, the lake outlasted all of them. Water usually does. Last I heard, the marina lawsuit is still crawling through county court, while half the former HOA board blames the other half under oath. Meanwhile, Mercer Lake sits quiet again under cold morning fog exactly where my grandfather left it. Some places are not meant to be conquered. Some places are meant to be respected. And if there is any lesson worth taking from this whole mess, it is this. Never confuse temporary power with permanent ownership, especially around people who understand the land better than you ever will. Rank the story from 10 to 0. I would love to know what you think.